Bad news out of Iceland. Fin whales are being hunted once again. We're lucky that it's half of the quota that was given out in 2023, but regardless, 128 whales will be killed, or up to 128 whales will be killed by Iceland, by one company who is the only company that does whaling in Iceland. We're going to talk about what that is about and the ramifications on this episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. This is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about fin whales, in particular, fin whales being hunted, which is obviously not something that we want to talk about. You know, a couple of days ago, I was sent an article by the IFL Science. It's IF and Love Science. I'm not sure if you remember that happening probably mid 2000s, early 2000s on Facebook. A page blew up with sort of all this science information by one person, a young woman who just loved science, and she effing loved it, and that's what she named it, and now it's IFL Science. And it's really cool. It's a cool website that shares a lot of scientific information. I think it creates its own articles now too. It's basically a full blown media site for science, which is great. So if you check it out, you can if you want to check it out, you can click the link in the show notes and you can check that out. But regardless, the information that I sent the other day, a couple days ago, was, hey, you know what? Iceland has a chance to take away its whaling. Iceland and Japan and one other country, I think it was Norway, that are countries who, Norway, Japan, and Iceland are countries who are still going against the IWC, the International Whale Commission, and hunting whales. And so they had a chance to not hunt whales. The government of Iceland said, hey, we don't have to give these licenses out. We're going to make a decision or announcement on Tuesday of whether we are going to actually allow these licenses to be done by one company. It's one company that's called Havlor. And it was given a license. It was announced that on Tuesday it was giving a license to hunt 128 fin whales in Icelandic waters and parts of Greenland and the Faroe Islands during the 2024 season, which typically runs from June to August. So now the good thing to note that the quota was actually half of what the 2023 was, which was 264 fin whales, according to a nonprofit organization called International Fund for Animal Welfare. That's IFAW, for those of you who know that organization based on the acronym. So one of the spokespeople, Patrick Ramage, said, today's announcement represents a significant reduction in the quota and the duration of the hunt, which is good. But he added that it was absolutely ridiculous that hunting at any level should be allowed to continue. He says it's bad news for Iceland and bad news for marine conservation. Now, I should mention that this made international news. So people are not happy with Iceland. Iceland has a very good reputation of being a really nice country. People love to visit it. It's got some really cool, obviously it's full of ice in different parts of the year. It's quiet. People are really friendly. Gorgeous views, and now it still has this whaling kind of hung over its head, and a lot of people don't like it. I saw one marine biologist who was actually getting married soon to her partner, and she said online that she was not going to visit Iceland for their honeymoon because of this decision. And so, Iceland is known as a very good tourist destination, so it'll be interesting to see if people boycott Iceland because of it. I don't know if that's happening. This is just one person, so it's very anecdotal. Time will tell over the next year, but that would be a very good way to protest, is just don't go to Iceland. And if you know people who want to go to Iceland, say wait till they actually ban fin whaling, where they stop giving out quotas and licenses to hunt. Whether it's 128 or one, we shouldn't allow them to hunt, or they shouldn't be hunting. The interesting thing, when I saw this, I was like, what is their conservation status? Like, fin whales are the biggest whale other than the blue whale. So they're extremely huge, and they're important species. They have very little predators other than orcas are the only known natural predator of fin whales, but due to fin whales' large adult size, only calves are likely to be truly vulnerable to predation. However, human-induced threats are commercial whaling. One of the most pervasive threats to fin whales is thought to be ship strikes as well, and fish entanglement, fish net and gear entanglement. Once they found that a third of fin whales' strandings appeared to involve a ship strike. and this risk is considered particularly high for vulnerable subpopulation of fin whales in the Mediterranean. Fin whales in the Mediterranean are also exposed to high levels of underwater noise and a risk of entanglement in fishing gear. These whales and those resident to the Gulf of California may also be particularly vulnerable to climate change that affects their prey distribution in their year-round habitat. Doesn't say anything about Icelandic waters, though, but they said there are also concerns about the accumulation of microplastics and other contaminants in both these resident fin whale populations. Now, I don't know if it's an international thing where their status, the IUCN red list status. So they were heavily hunted during the industrial whaling period in the first half of the 20th century, so the 1900s. Fin whales were severely depleted. Globally, the species is considered vulnerable on the IUCN red list of threatened species because the remaining population is considered to be such a small fraction of what it was before modern whaling. The Mediterranean subpopulation is considered vulnerable. The species is listed in Appendix 1 of the Convention of Migratory Species, the CMS. Global population estimates are difficult to obtain due to the species dispersal over deep open oceans that are difficult to survey with traditional methods. This is on the IWC.int. I'll put a link to that as well. It's the International Whaling Commission's page about the fin whale species. Really cool page. Gives you sort of the idea of how big it is. The adult length is up to 27 meters. Multiply that by 3, you're looking at about almost 60 feet or over 60 feet. Adult weighing over 80,000 kilograms, and a newborn is about 6 to 6.5 meters, weighing anywhere between 1,000 and 1,500 kilograms, not kilometers, kilograms, folks. It's late. I'm going crazy with this 5-day-a-week thing. Regardless, I'm loving it. Don't worry about it. I'm loving it. Regardless, going back to this article, this has always been an interesting issue with Iceland in terms of the reason why they're whaling. Sometimes they don't, sometimes they do. The reason why they had such a lower, they have the licenses, was the Icelandic Food and Veterinary Authority estimated that in May 2023 reported that 67% of the 58 whales caught by boats it monitored died or lost consciousness quickly or immediately. But it said 14 whales were shot more than once and 2 were shot 4 times just before they died. Officials said that later that whaling can resume with stricter requirements on hunting methods and increased supervision. So the worry in the 2023 was the fact that these whales weren't dying humanely. I know it sounds weird, but when a marine mammal dies, there's a big push to make sure it dies as quickly and as painlessly as possible. They do the same thing for seals in Canada when they do sealing. I know it's not a popular topic. Nobody wants to see a seal clubbed, but you club them over the head with a pick at the top. It seems like a very brutal way to die, but according to science, this is the best way for these seals to die, and this one is the best way. They figured out the best way for fin whales to die quickly and painlessly as possible, without going through any torture. But unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case. They temporarily suspended the commercial hunting of fin whales last year on animal welfare grounds because some of them were shot more than once. So obviously they went through pain. So the International Whaling Commission imposed a commercial whaling ban in the 1980s due to dwindling stocks. Iceland, which left the IWC in 1992, returned in 2002 with a reservation to the ban and allowed commercial whaling to resume in 2006. Along with Norway and Japan, Iceland is one of the only countries still practicing commercial whaling. The country has annual quotas for the fin whales, and minke whales fishermen are allowed to hunt in its waters. It exports most of the whale meat to Japan, but demand there has dwindled since Japan left the IWC in 2019. So last month, Japan's government proposed adding fin whales to an allowable catch list, which included 3 other whale species. So whales are still being hunted. For what reason, I have no idea. Some people are listing culture. Some people are listing that there's still a demand for whale meat. I've seen a lot of reports that says it's not true. These are scientific reports, so I'm more apt to trust them. But Japan, Iceland, Norway says that there's still a demand and people want to be traditional, and this is the traditional way for a lot of these countries. And so, it's disappointing, to say the least, as a marine conservationist. Knowing that these species are vulnerable, knowing how big these species get, how important they are to the ecosystem. Blue whales, fin whales are known to be very, very important because not only when they live do they provide a lot of nutrients through their poo, essentially, but also when they die, they sink to the bottom and they provide a lot of food and nutrient cycling into the ocean. And that's a really, really important part of the ocean, which we don't really fully understand, I don't think, like as people who are listening to conservation stories for the first little bit. But they're a very important species. Whales, like large whales like the blue whales and the fin whales, are important species, and we need to protect them. Having 128 die for potentially, culture or whale meat doesn't seem to be one even in demand overall, but also as much as in demand as it used to be. But also, it's just there are a lot more people who are paying way more attention, and whales are always close to our heart, and that is something that we need to make sure that we protect. And having 128 licenses to kill these fin whales just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense for conservation. I think it's a bad look for Iceland. But I would love to know your thoughts. This is a quick episode. I wanted to make it quick. I know I've been posting every day, Monday through Friday. But I would love to hear what you think about this. Hit me up on Instagram at How to Protect the Ocean. That's at How to Protect the Ocean. You can also subscribe to our newsletter. That's speakupforblue.com/newsletter. I post every Monday to Friday. And every day, Monday to Friday, and you get one of our episodes, a summary of one of our episodes, and a link so you don't miss any of the episodes. You also get 3 different articles on news that's happening around the world that I'm not able to cover necessarily on the podcast just yet. And then you get 3 job advertisements in case you're looking for that type of job advertisement, along with other podcast episodes in our network of podcasts. So check that out, speakupforblue.com/newsletter. And of course, I've been talking about this app, this community app that I'm bringing out in the middle of July. All you have to do to get updates is go to speakupforblue.com/ocean app. That's all one word and APP at the end. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. This has been a great episode, and I want to thank you again for listening to each and every episode. I want you to have a great day. Talk to you later, and happy conservation.